Have you ever wondered what really happens to the soul after cremation? Does the fire end everything? Or does it just begin a new journey that is invisible to human eyes? What if I told you that a woman died, was taken to the presence of Jesus, and what he revealed about the fate of the cremated will shake everything you believe about death? In today's video, you will learn the shocking story of Rachel Monroe, who crossed the limits of the physical world and returned with a mission to alert humanity about a spiritual detail that no one is talking about. So leave your like, subscribe to the channel for more real stories like this, and write here in the comments the city where you are watching from. We want to see how far this powerful message is reaching. Hold on tight, because what you are about to hear now could change your eternal destiny. My name is Rachel Monroe. I was 41 years old when it all happened, and I never imagined that a simple spring Saturday in Flagstaff, Arizona would be the last of my life, at least as I knew it. It was April 22nd, 2023, and everything was perfectly normal. Sunny, clear skies, the distant sound of children playing in the park near our home. I had just returned from my Uncle Roger's funeral. He had died at age 68 after battling aggressive cancer for years. He was like a second father to me. His last wish? To be cremated and have his ashes scattered in the Grand Canyon. That day, after the ceremony, something inside me felt uneasy. I don't know if it was the thought of seeing that body, the same body that had lifted me up in her arms when I was a child, turned to ashes, or if it was the look on my Aunt Diane's face, completely emptied. But there was a pressure in my chest, a tightness as if my heart were being squeezed from the inside. I came home with this strange feeling and a throbbing headache. I tried to ignore it. I made coffee. I lay down on the couch. I turned on the TV, but the pain grew. A tingling started in my left arm. I felt cold sweat, dizziness. I called 911, but before I could say a word, the world around me began to unravel. I felt my body fall off the couch. The pain was unbearable, a weight in my chest, like something was trying to pull me out of myself. And then, silence. But the silence was not empty. It was thick, deep, dark. The next thing I remember was seeing my own body on the living room floor. I was hovering above myself. I saw the cell phone still in my hand with the call cut off. I saw my eyes open, motionless. And that's when I realized I died. But before panic could overtake me, a vast presence enveloped me. A light was approaching. Not just any light. It was alive. It pulsed with something I can only describe as absolute love. And from that light emerged a figure. He didn't need to say who it was. I knew, my spirit knew. It was Jesus. And it was with the most serene and at the same time most powerful voice that I have ever heard. Not with my ears, but with something beyond, that he said to me, "You need to see something that many ignore, especially about those who were cremated." At that moment, the heat of the light around him intensified, and everything around me began to change. I was about to witness something I could never have imagined. The light around Jesus expanded, like a wave that did not blind but revealed. And when he reached out his hand, I did not walk. I was carried as if my spirit were being pulled by a gentle, steady, and inescapable current. The scenery around me changed in the blink of an eye. Suddenly, I was in a place that seemed to have no ground, no sky. Just a vast, nebulous space as if it were between the physical world and something that should not be entered by the living. At first, everything seemed empty, but then I began to see forms. They looked like human shadows, but there was something strange about them. They floated, disoriented, as if they didn't know where they were. Some cried silently, others just stared around, expressionless. And all of them carried the same mark. They were lost. I felt a weight on my chest, even outside my body. A grip of sadness so deep it made me want to scream. And that's when I realized those souls weren't damned, but they were trapped in a kind of spiritual voucher. And Jesus was showing me that for a reason. Without words, he made me understand that those people I saw were souls of people who had been cremated. The revelation shocked me. How was this possible? I had always heard that cremation was just a practical cultural choice, that God didn't care about it, and then a new truth struck me like a bolt of lightning. It wasn't the cremation fire that held them. It was what they took with them before the fire. Anger, hurt, betrayal, fear, guilt, all those pains were trapped inside them. And when they were cremated, their bodies, the last physical channel through which they could release that, were destroyed before they could let go of what held them captive. They died with their hearts on fire, but not the flames of God. And when their bodies turned to dust, that pain had nowhere to go. And there they were, floating, screaming without sound, some repeating names, others trapped in memories. I saw a woman holding a doll, as if she were still searching for the daughter she lost. I saw a man kneeling, trying to hold letters that disappeared from his hands. I saw a young man covering his ears as if trying to silence screams that only he could hear. Jesus made me feel what they felt: the confusion, a loneliness, and above all, the desperate desire to return to the light. But they couldn't. They do not know that they can be delivered, he said, not with words, but directly into my spirit. They need prayer. They need someone to call them by name. It was then that a wave of heat hit me, not of condemnation, but of responsibility. I understood. If no one prays for them, they remain imprisoned. And at that moment, Jesus showed me something even more terrible. The environment around me began to change. The floating souls, once distant, were now all around me, close, almost touching my spirit. I felt as if each of them were trying to tell me something, but without voice. Only sensations. Raw emotions, as if their souls were screaming from within their own ashes. Jesus took me deeper. Now I was in a place that seemed to be made of fragments. Fragments of urns, coffins, burned photos, charred military medals, melted chains, broken rings. Everything there seemed to contain interrupted stories. I knelt without realizing it. It was unbearable. The memories of that place were alive, impregnated. Each ash seemed to carry the echo of something unresolved. Suddenly a soul approached, an old woman. Her eyes were open, but she couldn't see me. It was like she was stuck in an eternal loop. I saw flashes of her life, her being betrayed by her son, being committed to a nursing home against her will, dying with resentment, never having forgiven. And then another soul, a young man, maybe in his early 20s. I saw images of abuse, addiction, self-destruction, and I watched him die without ever believing that God loved him. He was cremated 3 days later with no one to pray for him. Jesus made me understand something that shocked me. Cremation, when done without prayer, without spiritual reconciliation, without forgiveness, can become an abrupt rupture between body, soul, and spirit. And in cases like the ones I saw, the soul remains suspended, waiting for something that he doesn't even know what it is. They are not forgotten by me, Jesus said, but they are forgotten by the living. I felt such deep pain, as if the prayers they needed were oxygen, and no one was praying. No one said their names. No one remembered them. They were like files erased from the family's memory. But I remember each one, Jesus said. And at that moment I saw a flame flare up in the middle of the valley, a single candle floating. It was the prayer of someone on earth, a granddaughter, perhaps, or a wife. And I saw a soul being set free, pulled into the light. The revelation was immediate. A single prayer has the power to break the chains of emotional cremation. But Jesus was not finished yet. You need to see what happens to those who just be cremated, and they died without forgiveness in the heart. And then the sky darkened. I was about to see something even more profound, something that, to this day, makes me wake up crying. The spiritual atmosphere around me changed again, but this time, radically. The peace that had been in the air was replaced by an intense pressure, as if the air itself were charged with suffering. It was like walking through a storm that never lets up, where each second seems to last forever. Jesus took me to a new region. It wasn't hell. It was somewhere between the world and judgment, a self-imposed limbo of longing where there was only one thing: acute awareness. The souls there knew exactly what they had done, what they had carried, what they had refused. And above all, they knew that they had chosen pain, even if they didn't understand it. I saw dozens, perhaps hundreds of souls. All had chosen to be cremated, but what kept them there was not the practical decision. It was the condition in which they died. Arrogance, skepticism, bitterness, contempt for God. A closed, hardened heart incapable of forgiving others and themselves. These souls were trapped in the reflection of their own ego. And the scariest image? I saw a woman dressed in fancy clothes, spiritual jewels that melted in her hands. She repeated, "I don't need anyone. I am enough. I don't regret anything." But his eyes screamed the opposite. I have seen businessmen, politicians, artists, pastors, yes, even religious people who had lived with hearts full of pride but died empty of regret. And at the time of cremation, when the body was turned to ashes, it was as if the chance to leave the weight on the meat had been eliminated, and the weight remained trapped in the spirit. Jesus revealed something terrifying to me at that moment. When the heart is closed, fire does not liberate, it seals. It was like being punched in the soul. With the body buried, there is time. There are visits. There are prayers over the grave. There are gestures of remembrance. But when the body is burned and the soul is immersed in sorrow, there is no more room for regret to touch. What remains is what I saw: souls trapped in a prison made of their own ashes. And that's when I saw something even scarier. There was a soul kneeling with its hands on its face. Beside it, an open urn, its own ashes. The soul wept as if time had stopped. It said between spiritual sobs, "Why doesn't anyone pray for me? Why did they erase me?" Jesus turned to me and said with authority, "You need to tell this. The world needs to know. They think death erases everything, but what is not resolved in life survives cremation." At that moment, a light began to shine in the distance. Jesus would take me to another place, the place where thriving prayers change the fate of trapped souls. As the light began to expand again, I felt something different this time. It was as if time itself had stopped. The echoes of the pain of the souls I had just seen still whispered within me. But now, Jesus was leading me to a space where all was silence, not the silence of absence, but of reverence, a sacred place. We came to an altar, but it was not like the altars on earth. This one was made of something that looked like condensed light, with thousands of tiny flames dancing in the air like strands of gold floating in the wind. Each flame, I understood, was a prayer said by someone on earth for a soul that has already departed. And it was there that Jesus showed me something that tore me apart inside. Cremated souls could only cross over into the light if they were remembered by name. Try name. Name was the key, because the name is identity, it is a bond, it is a spiritual connection. I saw a man who was trapped in a dark limbo. No one knew he had died. He had been cremated and thrown to the wind. No funeral, no prayers, nothing. But one day his sister dreamed of him and felt in her heart that she needed to pray. On the altar, I saw his name appear in golden letters, and the flame lit. At the same moment, I saw his soul being enveloped in light and lifted up as if carried by invisible angels. And then Jesus spoke to me again, with a voice that did not vibrate in the air, but within my essence. You need to tell them that forgetting is the worst form of condemnation. I understood that it is not the cremation itself that binds. It is the forgetfulness. It is the lack of prayer. It is the absence of forgiveness. When the body turns to dust, there are no more rituals, no more candles lit, no more ground to kneel on. If the heart has died hard and no one intercedes, the spirit wanders. I saw the altar glow even brighter. People were praying for their parents, their children, their grandparents, and each prayer lit a new flame. Some were strong, some were small, but they were all heard. And then Jesus said something that marked me forever. There is no distance between the soul and heaven that a prayer cannot bridge. That's when I understood my calling. I was dead, but Jesus wouldn't let me stay. He wanted me to take this truth to the world. He wanted me to warn people. He wanted me to call out the forgotten by name. He wanted me to say loud and clear, if someone you love has been cremated, don't leave them in the dark. Pray, cry out, forgive. And then Jesus showed me the image of my own Uncle Roger, the same one who had been cremated days before. He was there waiting. Nothing in the world could prepare me for what I saw next. When Jesus showed me my Uncle Roger's face, my heart nearly stopped. Or at least it would have if I had still been in a physical body. It was him, but not as I knew him. He looked younger, without the gray hair, without the marks of illness. But still it was him. And yet there was something missing in his gaze. Something that hurt just to witness, hope mixed with confusion. He was sitting on a surface that wasn't the ground but seemed to support him. All around him was mist, ash, fragments of what had been his urn, as if every part of the container that held his remains had spiritually dissolved along with his body. And he was holding something in his hands. An envelope. I felt with absolute certainty that it was an unsent letter, an unresolved grief. Jesus looked at me, and without saying a word, I knew. This letter represented the forgiveness he never gave to his father before he died. Did Roger die with a clean heart, as everyone thought? No. He died with choked words, with hidden anger, with wounds that chemotherapy could not reach. And when he was cremated, all of this became a prison, camp. He was trapped in the ashes of what he didn't say. I approached him. I called his name. Tio Roger? He raised his head but did not see me. His eyes passed over me, as if I were just a breeze. It was then that Jesus made me understand. He couldn't hear me, because there was no prayer for him yet, not from me, not from anyone. That crushed me. I cried. I cried like I never had before. I didn't know. Forgive me. I didn't know you were there. And it was at that moment that Jesus placed his hand on my shoulder. A transference took place. My pain turned into a cry, and my cry turned into light. At that moment, a candle was lit on the altar, with his name on it, Roger Monroe. I saw the flame grow as a response to love, to repentance, to intercession. And then I saw it. I saw my uncle's face change. He took a deep breath, as if the air had returned. His eyes gained color. He saw me. He smiled. And before I could say anything, he began to be lifted into the light. No words, no promises, just lightness, release. Jesus turned to me and said, "That's the power of the name. That's the power of love." And there, for the first time, I understood. If you don't pray for the cremated, maybe nobody or. And then Jesus showed me a multitude, millions of souls, all waiting for the same thing, be remembered. The space around me expanded as if the very fabric of eternity were being stretched before my spiritual eyes. Jesus took me higher, or perhaps deeper, until I found myself facing something I will never be able to forget. An endless plain, yes, infinite, and in it, a crowd, a multitude of souls that had no name. They were still. Some sat silently. Others walked in circles. Some kneeled. Others stood completely still as if they had given up on everything. The scene seemed made of dust, of still wind, of memories that were never completed. There was no crying. There was no moaning. There was just waiting. I felt the truth in my spirit like a punch. These were the souls that were cremated and forgotten. Jesus was beside me. I could not see him with my eyes, but I felt his presence as if it were a gravitational force of love supporting me. He then made me understand. These souls died with their hearts full of pain, hatred, regret, pride. They did not let go. And when they were cremated without prayer, without consecration, without intercession, they disconnected from the light. The revelation was cutting. The oblivion of the living became the silence of the sky over them. Not because God rejected them, but why nobody called for them. I began to tremble, too. I felt a desperation, a clamor rising within me. It was as if those souls were screaming at me, but without sound, asking, "Remember me. Say my name. Pray for me." A lady approached. She reached out her hand, but could not touch anything. She said with her eyes, "My daughter doesn't believe in anything. They burned me like someone getting rid of a body. They forgot about me." A teenager ran past me, flapping his arms as if he were trying to wake up from a nightmare. "I just wanted to be loved," his soul said. I saw war veterans. I saw single mothers. I saw pastors. I saw atheists. I saw children. I saw repentant murderers. I saw innocent people who never understood what forgiveness was. They all had one thing in common: no one interceded for them. It was then that Jesus showed me a scene. A woman on earth lighting a candle and saying her deceased father's name. "James Edward Monroe, wherever you are, I pray for you today." And the flame lit on the altar, and one in the crowd raised his head. I understood there the power that we have, alive, to be bridges between those who have departed and the light. But I also understood that most people don't pray, they don't believe, they don't remember. And then Jesus looked at me with a gaze so steady that it burned my soul. "You saw, now you need to speak." When Jesus spoke to me, "You have seen, now you must speak." Something inside me broke and rebuilt at the same time. It was as if my soul, which had previously been a recipient of only the pain of that place, was now being set on fire by a purpose greater than anything I had ever experienced. It was more than a calling. It was a holy order. I was enveloped in an intense golden light. It was no longer the soft glow it had been before. It was as if the throne of God itself was shining down upon me, revealing a part of heaven that few are allowed to see. And there, in that moment, Jesus showed me what happens when someone decides to obey. I have seen women who had prayed for cremated husbands being visited in dreams with embraces of peace. I have seen pastors who, even though they doubted the need for prayers for the dead, began to feel the touch of the Holy Spirit and bowed in intercession. I have seen children who, without understanding any theology, said their grandparents' names in their evening prayers, and these prayers became torches in the spirit world. But I also saw those who refused, the skeptics, the cold-hearted, the religious who said, "After death, nothing can be done." And Jesus said sadly, "These perpetuate silence, and silence is where souls are lost." At that moment, I saw a woman in a church listening to a traditional sermon about heaven and hell. She had lost her son in an accident. He was cremated. There was never a goodbye, there was never a prayer. And for years she believed that he was at peace. But deep down, she felt something was wrong. I saw this woman later, watching a video on her phone, a testimony, mine. And when she heard the words, "Cremated souls are not condemned, but they need prayer to find their way to the light," she fell to her knees and cried as if all the pent-up pain finally had somewhere to flow. She said her son's name out loud for the first time in years. "Nathan, son, forgive me for forgetting you." And at that moment on the eternal altar, a new flame was lit. Jesus looked at me and spoke again with firm sweetness. "Those who return with the truth do not return by chance. They are like trumpets on dry land. Where there is silence, they must echo." Then I understood. My death was not the end. It was the sending. I would be a trumpet, a voice for the forgotten, a cry for those who wander in the ashes of pain, waiting for a name, a prayer, a chance to come home. And then, he showed me the way back to my body. But first, Jesus showed me something that still makes me cry today. My own name, written in fire on the altar. When I saw my name there, written in fire upon the altar, Rachel Monroe, it was not an exaltation. It was a mark, a mission engraved in eternity. Jesus made me understand that those who receive the revelation must bear the weight of it, and that weight would be my cross, but it would also be my strength. The light around me began to dissolve, and a distant sound began to take shape. It was like the echo of the physical world calling me back, an intermittent beeping, a cry, a name being screamed, "Rachel, Rachel, for God's sake, listen to me." And I knew I was coming back. But before the return was complete, Jesus said for the last time, not with words, but with that same soul-shattering impact, "You will be discredited. They will laugh at you. They will call it delirium, an invention. But speak anyway, because every prayer that arises from your testimony will free a name." And then, as if pulled back, I fell in my body. The weight was unbearable at first, like putting on cold, wet clothes, like walking into a house that no longer felt like yours. My throat burned, my head throbbed. I opened my eyes with a start and saw the white lights of the hospital. A doctor turned in surprise. Nurses screamed. A woman beside me fell to her knees, crying. It was my sister. I was kept under observation for 3 days. They told me I had a sudden cardiac arrest. My heart had stopped for more than 3 minutes. They wanted clinical answers, but what I had, it was fire in the spirit. The first few nights I barely slept. The altar, the souls, the ashes, everything came back to me in flashes, as if I were still between the two worlds. I couldn't forget the nameless crowd, not even my Uncle Roger's eyes, not even the words of Jesus echoing, "Say it anyway." It was then that, alone in the room, I closed my eyes and began to pray, quietly, name by name that came to mind. Nathan, Joanne, Terrell, Martin, Olivia. Each name was a thread of light coming out of the earth towards the altar. And I saw, even there, awake in the hospital, I saw a flame ignite in the spirit. The next morning I asked for paper and pen. I started writing everything down. Every detail, every face, every word. I knew the world wasn't ready, but the souls were waiting. And in that room, weak and still with an IV in my arm, I murmured the phrase that would become my banner. May no name be forgotten in the ashes. What I experienced on the other side never left me. Even after I was discharged, even when I returned home, even when I was washing dishes or driving around the city, the altar still burned inside me. I could feel the flames, not of condemnation, but of mission, of urgency. People began to notice that I was different. My eyes would well up when I heard the name of someone who had been cremated. I would feel a pang in my heart every time someone said, "Ah, it was just a body. Now it is at peace." No, not always. It is not always at peace. I started talking, first in small prayer groups, then in larger circles, until I decided to record a video and tell everything. I looked into the camera and said, without filters, "I died." I saw Jesus, and he showed me the souls of the cremated who are still waiting for you. The video went viral. Some called me a liar, crazy, a fanatic. Others began to pray. I received messages from people who had lost children, parents, grandparents, all cremated. Many had never even said a prayer for them. But after hearing my testimony, they began to say their names out loud, crying. And I knew the flames were lighting up again on the altar. I created a list, an entire notebook just with names. I prayed every night, name by name. Sometimes I felt the room change atmosphere. Other times, I felt a presence passing like wind. But what I felt most was lightness. Because now, my every prayer was like a key turning on invisible chains. One day I dreamed of the nameless crowd. But this time, it was getting smaller. Many were heading towards the light. Some waved at me. Others just smiled. But there was peace. There was liberation. And deep down, Jesus looked at me and said, "That's it. Keep going. There are still many left." Today, every time I hear about someone being cremated, I close my eyes for a moment and whisper, "Jesus, call this soul by name." And if you've come this far listening to my story, reading my words, I need to tell you, don't be silent. Don't ignore. Don't forget. If someone you love has been cremated, pray for them. Not because God needs formalities, but why souls need remembrance. And if there is hurt in your heart, release it now, because what you carry goes with you. And fire, when it finds a bitter heart, seals the pain instead of releasing it. Today I am alive, but part of me and still bears the mark of fire, not from the ashes that kill, but from the love that rescues. And I leave this truth with you. The ashes forget, but heaven never forgets. A name said in prayer. If you liked this beautiful spiritual testimony, leave a like, comment your impressions, subscribe to the channel, and don't forget to activate the notification bell to watch each new video and help us spread this message to a greater number of people. Until next time.